All right, welcome. We're going to discuss my projected final season standings for the NHL this season. This is for the Eastern Conference, so we just got Atlantic and Metro. This is going to have some explaining, so bear with me. We're going to start off in the Atlantic. I'm projecting Toronto to finish first overall. I like what they've done on defense specifically. I have questions kind of about their offense. William Nylander, second line center. John Tavares, third line center. I understand you're getting scoring depth, but at the same time, that second line without Tavares or Nylander, one or the other, going to look a little weak. Going to be a little bit of a concern regarding scoring. This is a team that nonetheless scores a lot of goals. Has some very talented players, so I'm not super concerned. But that is a little note. Their goaltender situation with Woll and Stolars. We'll see how they fare throughout an entire season, but I'm not super concerned about Toronto at least making the playoffs. And I have them projected first overall in the Atlantic, so we'll see if that happens. Second, I have Boston. This is somewhat contingent upon the Jeremy Swayman situation ironing out and the Bruins signing Swayman. But at the same time, I think Corpusalo can handle the workload for the first couple weeks or so, kind of giving Swayman a little leeway time per se. I do like what they did in terms of getting Elias Lindholm. I think that is a significant upgrade in the center position over a guy like Zaka or Charlie Coyle. Both guys had career years last year. A lot of guys on the Bruins had career years. I'd kind of expect some of those stats to fall back down. Marchand maybe continue a little more with that regression as he ages. But overall, I think we can somewhat expect about what we saw last year from the Bruins. I think you'll get a little more offense. I think your goaltending might struggle a little more without Swayman, without Ullmark notably. Having a starting goaltender in net for 82 games between Swayman and Ullmark, it was a huge advantage, right? They could rely on their goaltending and defense to win them games, and they did. So it's going to be a little less of the goaltending, a little more of the defense, and a little more scoring. I think we'll be about the same as last year. Third place, I have Florida. Florida's offense looks great. Plenty of depth, right? They look good. They have decent goaltending in Bobrovsky and so on. My concern with them is their defense. I think their defense is going to take a step back. You had a guy like Kulikov having a career year who is a perennial third-line pairing defenseman, probably going to play second line minute role. That's a little concerning. He did have a very good season in Florida last year. Best I've seen Kulikov play in his entire career. I don't know how sustainable that is for multiple seasons, so we'll see. Florida also has a team defensive mentality. So I think some of their defensive deficiencies will be covered up because their offense or their forwards will help. So I think Florida will still be good. Really, these top three teams, take your pick. Florida winning the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row, might get off to a bit of a slower start. Two very shortened off seasons, comparatively speaking, to Boston and Toronto. Moving on to Tampa. Tampa, I think, will be okay. When it comes to their forward depth, I have concerns. I think their third line will be fine. I have some questions about their second line. They weren't terrible last year, but we'll see what happens this year. The loss of Stamkos, the gain of Getzel, I think Getzel will help. I don't know how much that'll move the needle. I think people are overhyping Jake Getzel just a bit. I think he's a fantastic player, but I think Stamkos is a fantastic player. And Stamkos got a lot of his points on the power play, so we'll see if the power play suffers a bit as a result. I think they'll still be a great power play. But we'll see what's going on with that. Vasilevsky needs a bounce back season. Moving on to number 5th, I have Buffalo. I think the addition of Coach Lindy Ruff will help. I know that sounds weird. I didn't really. So he's more of a defensive style coach, right? Defense first, team defense, buy into defense. And I think that's exactly what Buffalo needs. Now, if you look at his tenure from last year specifically, You didn't really see that coaching style come out with Lindy Ruff, so I'm hesitant. But based on really every other year of Lindy Ruff coaching, whether you agree or disagree, Lindy Ruff is kind of what the Sabres need in a coach, right? They need buy-in from their forwards to play 200-foot game, and I think Lindy Ruff can help them get there. I don't know how much of a needle mover Lindy Ruff will be. I still have them missing the playoffs. I don't necessarily think they'll be up in it until the final game. They could be. They certainly have the talent to be, but I don't know if they're going to put it all together. So I have Buffalo in fifth. Ottawa in sixth. I don't really know what they've done to improve other than acquiring a goaltender in Linus Ullmark, which is great, and I think highly of Ullmark. Ullmark had fantastic stats on a Buffalo team that had pretty rough defense in front of him. He was very consistent. He's a guy that will let in the first goal and then be lights out for the rest of the game. And I think that'll be a huge advantage for Ottawa. I think if they were going to pick up a goaltender, Ullmark should have been the guy. And I think they won that trade with Boston. I don't think there's really a question about that. But other than that, you're struggling with defense, not just from your defensive core, but from your forward core playing that 200-foot game, just as Buffalo is as well. And I think until that is fixed, I don't see this team really making a strong push for the playoffs. And I do think they win more games because Allmark is that good in net, assuming he stays healthy. But we'll see. I don't know. Seventh place, and this may come as a surprise to some people because they were, 1 point? I'm checking right now. They were tied in points to make the last wild card seed last year. Detroit, I think, is good. I think they have a good forward group. I think they have a good first line. My biggest question with them in their forward group would be their second line center. Who's the guy? Is it JT Compher? I think there's an opportunity to kind of improve. But when it comes to the defense and goaltending, I have massive concerns. This was a bottom 10 defensive team last year. And I think I think their defense got worse with the subtraction of Jake Wallman. I still don't understand that move. I do not like that trade for Detroit. There might have been stuff going on behind the scenes, but I don't think they didn't do anything to really improve their defense. It just kind of got worse, and they were already kind of not good. I don't really know what's going on with the goalie situation. Who are they carrying 3 goaltenders again? What's going on? You have a guy in Jet Campbell who will play in the AHL, and you have Alex Lyon, and I don't know. I have questions. You have Sebastian Kosa. You need some of these young guys to come in and make an impact. I'd like to see Simon Edvinsson really get a legitimate shot this year and be in that top 6. I think he should be there opening night. I think he should have had more of an opportunity last year. You got to start developing these young guys if you want to make a push for the playoffs. The future of your franchise, the reason you tear down is so you can acquire these guys, right? So we'll see. I'd like to see Jonathan Berggren get more of an opportunity as well than he did last year. He got some opportunity last year. I think he was fine, but he's young and he's very talented. So I think there's opportunity with these younger guys in Detroit. I just don't know how much of an opportunity they're going to get and how much a couple, 2, 3 of these rookie guys are going to really impact this team to a point where they become a playoff team. I think they're going to take a step back. I don't think it's going to be a massive step back, but I could definitely see all 3 of these teams, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, somewhere in the 80-point mark. I don't think they're going to be super far apart. If you want to have Buffalo in 7th, Ottawa in 5th, knock yourself out. I think that it's going to be close, but I don't think either of these 3 teams are really going to make a strong push for the playoffs. We might be talking about it a couple weeks out from the end of the season, but that's probably where it's going to fall apart. At least, it's now October. I'm doing this later than I usually do, but I don't know, man. I don't see it at this point. It's a new season. Things can change. Don't be super discouraged if you're a fan of these teams. All 3 of these teams have bright futures. It's just about getting there, right? In 8th place, I have Montreal. I think Montreal will be better. They had, well, I don't know. They had 76 points last year. They were 30, 16, and or 30, 36, and 16, which wasn't terrible. Maybe from a points perspective, they might be about the same, but some of their stats should improve. Like that goal differential of minus 53, kind of brutal. Um, some of these guys taking steps. Slavkovsky looking good, looking more like a top overall pick. They have some of these young guys and defense coming in. You have Lane Hudson coming in. I do like Sam Montembeau in net. I'm not going to lie. I know he gets some hate and I know he gets some love. He's kind of polarizing. Um, excuse me. I like Sam Montembeau. Line should be back in a couple weeks. Right? I think they'll be okay. I mean, Reinbacher will be out, but he wasn't really there last year. So I think this team will take a step. I just don't think it'll be a step into or near playoff contention, and that's okay. It's a very young team. They're still not very far into the rebuild. They've made incredible progress with the rebuild so far, but I think there's still plenty of time for Montreal to build it back up, and I think they're doing it well, and I think they're doing it right. Which, as a Bruins fan, I hate, and I hate to give Montreal credit, but they're doing a nice job with this rebuild, and I think they're going to be very good in the not so distant future. Moving on to the Metro Division, I have the New York Rangers first overall. There are some concerns. Is Lafreniere going to be a first line winger, right? What's going on with your third line? I don't know. I have some questions, but overall, their defense, I think, is great. I think you can get offense from your defense, and I think you have really sturdy defensive defensemen back there as well. Really high on Ryan Lindgren, Schneider. I'm high on a lot of these defensive guys for New York. I think their goaltending will be good. Shesterkin should have a good year. He's one of the best goaltenders in the league. I'm not too concerned about the Rangers. I think they have the tools to score goals and win games, both offensively and defensively. I think they have enough grit. I don't think they have a lot of grit. Take it with a grain of salt because that's kind of open to interpretation. But they're not going to be like, you're not going to get, I don't really know. It's open to interpretation. I think they could be a little more physical than they are. Right? And you have guys that can be physical, but I think there's opportunity there. And that's more attuned to playoffs rather than the regular season. But they haven't struggled too much in the playoffs. They do pretty well, usually making it to the Final Four. I think New York's going to be good. Number 2, this is where it starts to get a little, not super hairy, but a little hairy. I have Carolina. I think their forward group is fine. I think their defensive core is not as fine. And I think their goaltending's okay. Pyotr Kochetkov, after his first year, he'll have a book on him now. He'll have tape. We'll see if teams figure out where to shoot on Kochetkov. A lot of goaltenders will have it's the second year for goaltenders is usually make or break. A lot of goaltenders will regress and regress significantly, whereas some goaltenders will sustain that success, right? And we see those goaltenders that sustain that success have very good NHL careers, and we see those goaltenders that regress either have to adjust mid-season and kind of get back to where they were, or they fall back and never are really able to quite recover. So it's a big year for Kochetkov in net. I have, concerns about their defense. You have potentially Orlov and Chatfield as your second line. Orlov, pretty solid offensive defenseman, can play some defense. Chatfield, defensive defenseman. But is that, I don't know, Chatfield more of a third liner. Orlov, maybe second, third liner. I don't really know. They didn't replace Shady or Brady Shea or Pesci. I'm combining both of their names, Shady. But they didn't replace either of those two guys essentially, which I think is fine. The coaching system that Brenda Moore brings, the coach of the Hurricanes, is a 200-foot responsible defense first, mentality, and I think that's worked very well for them, especially with the players that they have. Um, but how much defense are you going to expect from your forward group, and how much will that sacrifice scoring goals, being offensively productive? So we'll see. I think there'll be a balance. I don't think it'll be as obvious. I think Carolina will be fine. Um, but I don't have them at number one, kind of for that reason. I do think they have a very good team. I think Aho is an absolute stud, superstar. There's no question about that. The dude is unbelievable. All right, we're moving on to third, and the reason I got the Devils jersey, I have them moving up quite a bit. Where did they finish last year? Seventh in their division. I have them moving up to third. Um, they have Markstrom. Markstrom's a little older, but still a very good goaltender. Very good goaltender. I think they did a lot of positive things to their defensive core, and having Dougie Hamilton back for a full year, kind of underrated defensively at this point in his career. Came into the league as an offensive defenseman. His defense wasn't really there with the Bruins, and he's really developed into a pretty solid 200-foot defenseman. And I'm not the biggest Dougie Hamilton fan, but I fully respect his game. He is excellent. I think that'll be a huge asset. I think guys like Brendan Dillon kind of getting big and physical on the back end. I'm not a Brendan Dillon fan either, but at the same time, he's a very effective second line pairing defenseman who can play a shutdown role if you need him to. He's not going to be a super consistently reliable guy, but that's kind of why he's in that second line role, and I think he's great at that. Can be physical, can drop the gloves. I think they'll be good on defense and on their back end. I think they have some guys that can contribute and play defense in their forward group. My question with them is really going to be health. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, their top two centermen, usually get hurt every year. I'd probably expect both of them to be hurt at some point throughout this year as well. Depending on the severity, we'll see. But if that's the case, then Eric Holla becomes your first line center, and I absolutely love Eric Holla. He's one of my favorite players, but I don't know, man. He can do the job, and then who's your second line center, and then it kind of falls apart from there, right? So the health of your top two centermen, who are two fantastic players. You have Jack Hughes, who is consistently at this point in his career over 100 points per season. You have Nico Hischier, who is one of the best two-way centermen in the game. Nico Hischier's defense is fantastic, and can put up points. Not going to be like a world beater with points, but he'll good enough for at least a second line center. First line center potential there. Could be a first line center if you need him to be, right? So I like New Jersey. I like what they've done. We'll see how it comes to fruition this year, especially after having such a down year last year. It's a little bold. We'll see. I think people are high on New Jersey, and after going through the standings, I can kind of understand why. It's because after after the top two teams, you can really make a case for a lot of these teams to kind of jump in. But I think New Jersey is the best overall built team, and we'll see moving forward. Number 4, I have the New York Islanders. The wild card teams. I have Tampa and New York Islanders. I don't have Buffalo or any other team in the Metro under New York making the playoffs. New York Islanders, kind of the definition of mediocrity. I think their defense is good. I think Sorokin in net. You have one of the most elite goaltenders in the league. I think their offense is okay. I like the addition of Anthony Duclair. I think Duclair is fine. He wanted to go there. I don't know if the term was necessary. I think he got a 4-year contract, and he can be good for a year or two, and then he kind of stutters and falls off. So we'll see. But I think they'll be about the same. I don't think they'll be bad. I think they'll be good enough to make the playoffs. I don't know after that. We'll see. Number 5, I have the Washington Capitals. They made some offseason moves that I kind of liked, right? They got Mangiapane. They traded out Darcy Kemper. They they made some moves. They got Dubois, which We'll see how that works out. That could negatively affect the team if he has a poor attitude and really affects the locker room. Then you could see Washington not finish in fifth. Um, but Dubois really needs a bounce back season, but we've been also saying that for years, so we'll see. But I think that helps solidify your center depth should it work out. So I don't I don't hate what they've done. I think they've improved over last year, but I don't think they necessarily should have made the. I was excited for them to make the playoffs last year. I don't think they necessarily should have made the playoffs. Um, but it was like last year, every team in the East was like, in the wild card hunt, was like, I'm just going to lose this game. I'm going to make stupid mistakes. And it seemed like nobody wanted to make the playoffs. So it was a little odd. Um, I don't think the Capitals make it this year, but I don't think they're super far off. I think they're still in contention. I really like their coach. I like their coaching style. I like what he does um, with the specific lines and pairings in terms of gameplay, game mentality. Like this group is going to be pushing forward in the first half of the. I don't know. I guess it's a little more in depth coaching, which I like. I think he's an excellent coach, and I think he did fantastic last year, and I think he'll be great this year as well. Anyway, moving on to six, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. On paper, Flyers not so great. They have Mitchkov. He'll be here for the full season this year. There are concerns about defense. There are concerns about offense. There are concerns about goaltending. I think Urson will be fine. And they have Fedotov as well. I looked up the pronunciation of his name, Fedotov. That's it. NHL has a nice list. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways, and I don't know. Fedotov, right? Fedotov and Urson and net. I think will be fine. Mitchkov will be good. I'm not super worried about that. I'm really high on Mitchkov. I hate the Flyers because I'm a Boston fan naturally, but I don't know, man. I like Mitchkov, and I like John Tortorella. He doesn't. He gets more out of a roster than most coaches do. I think they'll win games purely because Tortorella is pushing the right buttons at the right time. But I don't think this team has the talent to make the playoffs just yet. I think they're on the right track. I think it's going to take some time, some of these contracts to fall off. We'll see what happens, but I have them in sixth. Seventh place, I have Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh finished the season strong, but you also had a great season from an aging Crosby. You had a pretty solid season from Malkin, and both of those guys played a full season, which is rare. I don't think that necessarily happens again, and history would tell you it won't happen again. One of those guys gets hurt, then you're struggling for either probably a substitute on that second line as a center. And then your second line kind of falls apart. You have Raquel and Riley Smith probably on that second line. I don't know what the production would look like with somebody else there. I have questions. Their defense is okay. They have some guys that are a bit inconsistent in their own zone, but can put up points. You have an aging Letang. You have Erik Karlsson, who's getting older. Erik Karlsson, very good offensive defenseman. When it comes to the defense, there are some questions. There always have been, but you know what you're getting with Erik Karlsson. And we saw it last year. We'll see it this year. Their goaltending, I like Jari. I think he's fine. We'll see. I don't see them. I see them taking a slight step back from where they finished last year. Last year they had 88 points, which isn't bad. They were 3 points out from the wild card spot. I don't think they're going to be as close this upcoming year, but I don't think they're going to be like a bottom feeder team either. Again, it's going to be tough because there are only so many points to go around, but I could see all three of these teams, Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, being around between 80 and 90 points. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me. So if you want to flip some of these teams around, as with the Atlantic, that's okay too. I don't know. It's probably going to be fine. Eighth place, I have Columbus. Questions about Merzlikins in net, questions about their defense, questions about getting those young guys some reps Like Juracek should probably be an NHL, a consistent 82 game NHL defenseman. Um, Questions about their offense and their young guys. Who is up to the challenge? Who is going to break out and who is not? We saw some breakouts last year, but nothing spectacular per se. Um, right? Boone Jenner is probably still what your number one center at this point. Maybe Fantilli steps into that role, and I love Fantilli. I hope Fantilli gets that spot. You lost a superstar, unfortunately, Johnny Gaudreau. That's it's a big loss, not just with your locker room, in your offense, but just in general. And I think it'll give them something to fight for. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't think their talent is there. I like their coaching change. I love Dean Evison. I think he'll be great for this team. But I think it's going to be a tough season in Columbus this year. So that's it. That's the Eastern Conference. We're at just about 26 minutes, which is why I did two videos. I got board space. I could have fit all four conferences up here, but I don't want to make an hour-long video, and I wouldn't watch it. I don't think anyone else would want to watch it. So that's it for this. If you agree, disagree, let me know. This is just fun. Season hasn't started yet. I really haven't watched much preseason hockey, which is unusual for me. But I'm starting Saturday, 10-5. I'll be going to a Bruins game, preseason Bruins game, and they're off kicks my hockey season. So I appreciate you. Take care, right?